Friday and Saturday was the disco. The disco. The strength of the disco music. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and I realized that as I was getting records from the record pool, Eddie Rivera at IDRC. I first started with David Mancuso at his pool. That was the first record pool, and I was very grateful to be part of that scenario. I remember seeing Donna Summer perform for the very first time at the record pool on a Wednesday afternoon, and she performed "Love to Love You, Baby," and we didn't know who she was. Casablanca Records was there, and they were debuting her, and she comes out on stage, little 5'4" cute girl, and she starts singing "Love to Love You, Baby." And let me tell you, the crowd went nuts with that record. And I experienced that. Yeah.
Right now, paint the picture. Who's around you at this 99 Prince Street record pool party? Because this is what people need to understand. Because I know the pictures, I know the people, but tell us who was around you at that time.
Well, there were a lot of key jocks there. A lot of jocks that represented the gay clubs all over the city. And keep in mind, the gay movement was a huge movement in the music business. I mean, think about it. Brazilian people are very festive. Gay people are very festive. That environment, when you think of gay clubs, what was going on in Fire Island, on the West Coast. I mean, this was the pulse of party. And the David Mancuso's pool had a lot of the big name DJs there, that were starting out. I can't remember a lot of them at this point, but, a lot of the names were there. And so it was exciting to be part of the pool, getting to meet and mingle with these DJs and learning a little bit about their mindset on what they did, the kind of music they were playing. Most of the gay clubs were playing a lot of high energy. I remember Jim Burgess playing a lot of high energy at 12 West, and Jim Burgess was a very talented DJ. Outside of being a DJ, he was very musically inclined. He knew a lot about classical music. He was brought up in that environment in his home, so he was very well educated in music itself. And all of these things, when you go into a recording studio, they have some value, because when you're putting together records, when you're mixing records in the studio, you're just not thinking strictly about the dance floor. You're thinking a little bit more about who else is going to buy this record? Who else is going to listen to this record? What can we do to this record to make it a little bit more, give it a little bit more broad appeal, with instruments, whether it's violins or piano, So that was Jim Burgess, very, very astute, And you had Bobby DJ, too, very, very talented DJ in his own right. Bobby DJ and Tom Savarese were managed by Marilyn Green Fisher. That was their manager. And I met Marilyn. As a matter of fact, I had Bobby DJ perform at the Ipanema. We started having guest nights on Tuesday nights at the Ipanema. We had Bobby DJ perform, David Todd perform. It was great to have these, maestros perform at the Ipanema too. So the Ipanema became a very popular place. Not to mention that it was Latin based, but we had a lot of, and where the Ipanema was located, 240 West 42nd Street, 52nd Street, the theater district, So people came out of their Broadway shows watching Annie or whatever other shows that were going on, and they came right into the Ipanema and became part of the mixture. Very exciting place. And keep in mind, the Ipanema was 2 blocks away from Studio 54.
Was Ipanema installation Rosner or Richard Long?
I believe it was a Richard Long system. And trying to remember the amplifiers that we had. We had a bunch. We had about 10 amplifiers. I'm trying to remember the name of the amplifiers, but it was a Richard Long system, I believe. And Richard put together some great systems, and so did Alex Rosner. Some great sound systems. To me, they were the epitome of sound systems. You think of the Paradise Garage and that system. There's never been anything like the Garage system. An incredible sound system. Talk about power and tweeters and having a DJ look like a god because of the power and of the system. Well, that was the Garage. That was Larry Levan and the Garage, and in many ways, David Mancuso too at the Loft. Absolutely.
I was gonna say nobody had that thrust like Larry Levan had. Nobody could turn on that thrust. That was just like,
man,
oh my God, the thrust.
Walking up those that garage driveway and trying to get into the garage, and there would be huge lines, and you're waiting, and all you hear is the pounding of that bass as you're online, and it felt like something was coming at, like an earthquake was coming at you. Incredible sound, incredible memories. And that's what made, a lot of the Garage was just a sound system. It was bigger than life. And, today you don't have that. You don't have, the quality, one thing.
Wait. You don't even have the music, no less the quality. The music's changed so different. So you can't really compare it. It's just, I tell people that there's no comparison. But let's stay back in that time because we need to hear more. We're being educated through your eyes. We don't want you to come to now yet. We'll leave that for later. But back in the Ipanema era, like you said, you were bringing in DJs on Tuesday nights. So was there other clubs doing the same, or you were the first to do that in the city?
No, the whole idea of a guest spot. And, a lot of the gay clubs were doing tea dances on Sundays, which is, it's an afternoon party and it's a festive party. And guest DJs were performing at these tea dances on Sunday nights in various gay clubs all over the country and here in the city, in Fire Island. So the whole idea of a guest spot was already there. I kind of took that and said, why can't we bring in some of these well-known DJs and create some extra excitement on a Tuesday night, and connect with the DJs that are performing as guests all over the place, kind of bring that environment to the Ipanema, which I thought was pretty exciting. So, one thing led to another. As a member, I left David Mancuso and his record pool. And keep in mind, I love David Mancuso. I always, to this day, David Mancuso holds a very special place in my heart for everything I learned while being at the record pool, the way he conducted the record pool business with the applications and the requirements to become a member of the record pool. You had to be performing at a club. You had to verify that you were performing at a club with a letterhead from the club just to be considered to come in and be part of the pool. Well, David went through a lot, getting the loft to run and getting the pool to become the number one pool in the country. It was the only pool that started, and it became the number one pool in the country. David was behind all of that, and the fact that while being at the record pool, you had to provide feedback on all of these records. Just because you're now part of the record pool, that doesn't mean that you're going to collect these records and brag about all these new records that you have. There was work to be done. You have to give feedback. You have to test these records, come back and provide feedback for each record. Do you like the record? Do you don't like the record? Why? What's wrong with the record? You have to provide this feedback and sign each feedback sheet for each record that you got from the pool. If one feedback sheet was not completed, your subscription for these new records will be terminated or stopped, because David was pretty adamant about making sure that the record companies got their feedback on these records, because that was the lifeblood of the pool. Feedback, more records. No feedback, why are these records coming down to the pool? There's money involved. It's a business. You have to understand, you have to conduct yourself as a professional while you were a member of David Mancuso's pool.
But let me show everybody the Ipanema thing is, you want a hot spinner in New York and one of the hot spots to be part of that record pool, because that was power for the pool to pull the best records. So by him showing that he was the man behind Ipanema, one of the DJs at the time, and he got him his place in history at 99 Prince Street Record Pool.
That's correct, Lenny. And and I look at my tenure at 99 Prince Street, and to me, it kind of sets a tone with everything I do in life. The discipline, you learn how to become a professional DJ. You walk around knowing that there's an order to what you do. And I thank Mancuso for that. Anyway, at some point, more pools started branching out. Hey, this record pool at 99 Prince Street is doing well. They're getting a lot of records. So the idea of other record pools, when you think of Pepsi Cola and Coca-Cola, if you have Coca-Cola, you have Pepsi coming in, because why not, copy it? So that's what happened with a lot of more record pools coming in. Eddie Rivera was part of David Mancuso's pool before he started his own record pool. And he learned a lot from David and how he watched and how he ran his pool. I believe Eddie saw an avenue that said, well, there's a lot of Latino DJs formulating, working at clubs, and maybe I can take this concept and run with it with a new pool. So at some point, the International Disco Record Center, IDRC, formulated. Eddie Rivera was the president, and he had his brothers, Jamie, Dennis, and the rest, some of the other Riveras, the Rivera family, run the pool. And at some point, I left David to join Eddie, because not because I didn't have anything against David, but because of the fact that Eddie and I had a lot of communication, and Eddie always communicated and talked to me like a brother. He always he wanted to help my career. He wanted to be there for me as a guiding light with things. He spoke to me with care, with an intent to want to enhance my career. So I saw that Eddie was beginning to get a lot of the records that David was getting. He had the same connection to a lot of these record companies, Polydor, Casablanca Records, TK, which was a huge force with Ray Caviano and Mr. Stone that owned the company. Well, I made that shift because I didn't think I was going to lose too much music by going to Eddie. And Eddie kind of, quote unquote, had my back with support. So I joined IDRC, and after time with Eddie, and I had DJ'd a few parties for IDRC, the Beverly Johnson party back in '81 at the record pool. Keep in mind that a lot of these record pools, for those that are out there that don't understand a little bit more about how these pools work, they were just not a location to pick up records and provide feedback. There were parties that existed at a lot of these record pools. Record companies would have events at these record pools and parties, and there will be music, there will be artists, there will be the industry at these parties circulating. A great place to get to mingle and get to know people at these parties. A lot of excitement. So what happened was Eddie at some point got a call from Vanguard Records at his pool. And Vanguard Records the history of Vanguard Records was not dance music, wasn't disco. When you think of Vanguard Records, when you think of the real label, classical, jazz, country, Joan Baez was the artist that built that label. This has nothing to do with disco. Maynard Solomon, Seymour Solomon are the two people that started Vanguard Records with $10,000 and built that label. When disco came into the arena in the 70s, there was so much excitement, so much quote unquote money to be made if you knew what you were doing in the business, that the Solomons, and keep in mind, they were older people already. They were in their 70s when disco came into the picture. So you imagine you're running a label, classical, jazz, and disco comes in. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with the madness?
You're telling me they actually were there when Thomas Edison created the gramophone. Think about it, because it would have been 1976, 77. They were there in the beginning of the 20th century, right there with think about it. In Colombia with those acetate, those. So you're dealing with that. You're dealing with dinosaurs, right? I mean, dinosaurs.
Well, yeah. I mean, let me tell you something. Maynard Solomon, the president of Vanguard Records, he worked, when he came to work at Vanguard, he came in and would walk in, wouldn't say hello to anybody, maybe his own personal secretary, good morning, and walk into his office, close the door, and you wouldn't see him all day. This was him every day. And what he was doing, he was writing a book on the life of Beethoven. behind closed doors. This was Maynard Solomon. So disco was kind of, there was money to be made, but he kind of didn't want to deal with it. It wasn't his cup of tea. Okay? So now, Eddie Rivera at IDRC gets a call from Vanguard Records, not from Maynard Solomon, from one of the other staff members. It could have been one of the guys that did promotion on some of their music. Anyway, I think it was Jeff Zarea. Jeff Zarea was an engineer at Vanguard Records, and he engineered a lot of this classical stuff. And it was kind of Maynard Solomon's right-hand man in trying to bridge into some of this modern music. Okay, so Eddie gets a call from Vanguard, and he relates that call to me, and he says, Pinky, Vanguard is looking for someone to help them with this disco music, this dance stuff. And I referred your name to Vanguard as someone that's in the pool that knows a lot about this music and could possibly help them. Okay, so I get a call from Vanguard based on that recommendation. And I got the call from, what's his name? Danny Weiss, who was a producer, did a lot of the jazz recordings, and was kind of handling some of the disco stuff. But he wasn't too sure about this disco stuff, what was hot, you know. All right, so I walk in there and I meet with Danny, and I give him my points of views that, you know, there's different types of dance music, there's high energy disco, there's different clubs that cater to different types of disco. Disco itself, not every DJ is going to play every disco record. There's a breakdown within disco of what DJs like. So I explained a lot of this to Danny, the difference between the gay clubs, the white clubs, the black clubs, and what type of quote unquote disco was going to hit these audiences. And more importantly, how a record company has to understand this, because now a record company just doesn't want to please the DJs for all of these different types of clubs. We're talking about getting stuff on the radio, and selling records that way. There's a big misconception, Lenny, about in this business, that if you have a hot club record, that the record is on its way and it's going to make it and it's going to be a big hit. Let me tell you, you could have a record be number one on a dance chart and still not get radio play and enough sales to substantiate that release. Why? Well, think about it. Clubs, people dance. Radio, people listen. Getting back to my old formula, I listened to a lot of stuff in the 60s that influenced my career based on hearing a melody and a song. People on radio want to hear a melody and a song. And the true marriage of making a record work is having a record that's good to dance to and at the same time, good to listen to. If you're not a dancer, if you're listening on the radio, something that has a little bit of a song. When you have both of those things working, now you have a potential of breaking something big.
But I want to ask this as well right now, because it's on my mind. Vanguard calls Eddie. Is this after Saturday Night Fever or pre-Saturday Night Fever? You know why I'm asking, right? Because the excitement of disco ignited right after the movie happened. That's what I'm wondering.
This could have been around that time. It could have. It may have been a little bit before. What year was that? Do you remember what year Saturday Night Fever was?
December of 77. The movie.
77. Okay. Well, I was at Ipanema. I remember I did one of my big records called Childhood Forever by Recreation Harmony on the Dynamo label. I picked up that record. Let me give you some insight. I picked up that record. I was playing that record as a 45 import from Canada. I forget the name of the label, but I remember the colors of the label: olive, round red circles, French label. I had 2 copies of this record, and I'm playing it back to back in the middle of the night at the Ipanema, creating a frenzy with this instrumental record. And I took it to Dynamo Records, 77, 78. And I spoke to the president of Dynamo Records. He himself, he had no idea of what was hot disco-wise. He's probably by 80 years old, and he put out a record not too long ago called Disco Dracula, which was like listening to Disco Duck.
The freaking worst piece of crap you ever want to hear in your life. You laugh about you Disco. You say Disco Dracula. I went, no.
Hey, but you know something?
Wait a minute, Pinky, you're so philosophical. They put you with all these wonderful young men, 70, 80 years old, already been through 60 years of the business. And I'm going, you're about 20 years.
Lenny, I'm presenting a heart attack to these people.
You're saying it so wonderfully and relaxed and eloquently. They must be saying, get this effing kid out of here. Get him out of here with this crap, right? And I'm just waiting for that to come. Go ahead.
You know, it's funny. So not to condition the president of Dynamo Records, I had to take him to the garage to show him. And let me talk
baptism
about a heart attack. Okay, he said his words to me were regarding visiting the garage was, that's a sick scene down at the garage. But I had to educate him and give him something to bite on so that he understood my communication with him about taking this record, doing a longer version for the clubs, which he didn't understand. Why do you want to do a long version? Why do you want to do 6 minutes of a record for? I mean, isn't 3 minutes enough? Isn't 4 minutes enough? Why, I had to explain, I had to show him the extension of these records being played in the garage, so he had a feel that the monotony made sense on vinyl for them.
So wait, let's paint the picture. Pinky brings this older gentleman to Sodom and Gomorrah with fire burning. Throws him in there and says, just trust me. We're going to show you what I mean momentarily. They go up. They see Noel, they go through the door, and they walk into the gigantic dance floor, and the place is on fire.
And he was, he was very intimidated just walking in, looking at the crowd on the outside, hanging out, walking up that ramp with the bass pounding. I mean, he never thought that disco was this, this setting. Anyway, long story short, we picked up the record from Canada. I did an edit, and we released the song on Dynamo Records. And the original title from Canada was in French. A Chacun Son un Français by Recreation Harmony. We released the song and translated it to English, which translates to Childhood Forever, and released the song. The song went top top 15 Billboard dance charts. I got nominated for Disco Mix of the Year for that record. I didn't win the nomination, 1978, at the Billboard convention at the Hilton Hotel that year. But I was nominated. And, I lost the nomination. The nominees for Disco Mix of the Year in 1978, there was Walter Gibbons with, I think, Block Party. There was Tom Savarese with Dance, Dance, Chic. There was a formidable bunch of, Manny Slally did another record. There was a bunch of nominees. I didn't win, but I was nominated, and I was very elated about the release of that record. We sold tons of records and definitely changed the mindset of the label, Dynamo Records, with what they were doing at that time. Anyway, going back to Vanguard, I got the job at Vanguard based on the interview with Danny Weiss. I still collaborated when I did mixes early with Vanguard as a consultant, and Danny Weiss would be there just kind of watching to make sure that, what I was doing made sense musically. In other words, are the vocals too high? Are the piano too low? Does this sound like a song, or is Ray gonna, kind of distort the song? And, I learned one thing at Vanguard. Communication with the artists, getting to know the artists, getting to get a feel of what they wanted out of their careers, getting to understand them as people, helped me when I went into the recording studio and did mixes, because I thought about those elements. I want to make sure that when I did a mix on the record, the vocals shined on the record. The vocal qualities were there. You hear a lot of records, especially today, you hear a lot of these house records. You can't hear the vocalists sometimes. It's so low on the mix that, you're hearing more of the bass and drums, but not enough vocals, not enough music. It's not up enough, all geared to the dance floor. Anyway, so, we had Carol Williams, we had Fonda. Let me tell you a story about Carol Williams, at Vanguard. We released, Daryl Payne was the producer on Can't Get Away. I did the mix on the record, and we released the song. The song started getting play on WBLS in the city, WRK Kiss FM in the city. Frankie Crocker was playing it on BLS, Barry Mayo on Kiss, Paco Navarro eventually on KTU started playing it. KTU is more of a freestyle, Euro disco station. The other two stations were playing more of the R&B dance stuff. So Carol Williams and Can't Get Away fit more of the R&B formula. Eventually, because of the sales, KTU would be playing it to respect the fact that, it's selling, let's play it, that kind of a picture. Anyway, so over time, we're getting Can't Get Away on the dance charts, on the R&B charts, sales. We had some sales on the record. At some point, like any record, doesn't matter how hot it is, whether it's Michael Jackson or whoever, Stevie Wonder, sales will start coming down on a record. Doesn't stay selling forever. It doesn't start, it doesn't stay on the radio waves forever. So when the record started dying out, sales-wise, we had a little bit of a powwow at Vanguard Records. What's that? We all got together, the promotional staff, the radio staff, and we discussed the sales of the record, and we discussed whether or not there's anything that could be done to get more sales. That was kind of a situation with every record. We always got together every week to go over sales, radio play, which stations are playing it, why aren't certain R&B stations playing this record? You know, keep in mind a group like the Gap Band, very big R&B group, big in the South. A lot of their initial releases, you couldn't get R&B radio in the Northeast or in the urban cities to play some of this stuff. It wasn't the urban sound. So, but if you got a lot of sales from the Gap Band in the South, eventually a station like BLS in New York or KISS, even though it wasn't the sound of the station because it was too not urban enough, would play the Gap Band out of respect, out of the sales. So you had all these different things going on, you know, on how a record gets played. And when you're working it with a record company, you have to understand all of this. You know, that's your job, to understand the different avenues that are out there on a record, you know. So, and you bring that knowledge and try to make it work with what you're doing. So, getting back to Can't Get Away, Carol Williams, the record started dying out. There's my girl.
There she is.
And what happened was we discussed what we could do to get more sales out of the record. And everyone's coming up with ideas. Ray Smith, who was head of radio promotions, he's deceased now, rest in peace, Ray, good man. Well, we decided to go back into the studio and do a new version of Can't Get Away. We would have Carol come in and thank the New York City DJs for playing Can't Get Away. So we wrote up a script. As a matter of fact, Carol may have written the script, and she talked it as the intro of the record. We edited that and then started the 10-inch dub mix that I mixed in the studio at Vanguard Studios. You know, Vanguard Studios was one block away from Vanguard Records on the same West 23rd Street in Manhattan. So I go into the studio with Mark Berry and we do a dub version. Now, we're not expecting any radio play from a dub version because dub versions are, you know, the whole concept of dub comes from a lot of these reggae records where they, you know, there's the term dub is a big part of the reggae movement for music. Well, we do a dub version of the record, and we decide to put it on a 10-inch record. Why 10-inch? Well, I knew, thank God, that I was part of the rock pool. Jellybean and I were both part of Rock Pool in the city when they opened up this pool for rock DJs playing.
Was that to John Luongo?
No. John Luongo had another pool. Rock Pool was started by Danny Heaps, who later became the A&R director at Geffen Records and signed Susie and the Banshees to the label. But basically, and Mark Fodiatis, who was part of the Rock Pool. These are guys that know the underground rock scene here in the States, in Germany, in the UK, Scotland. You know, they understand the pulse of dance rock music, the underground stuff, you know, and I respect that. That's another angle of music that got very little radio play, a lot of college radio associated with that movement. But I wanted to get some of these records. I grew up on rock and roll. I wanted to have a library of dance rock records. You know, New Order and Blue Monday was one of those records that came from that environment and became part of the disco scene, but it was basically a rock band, you know. So getting back, the rock movement had a lot of 10-inch records. Okay, there was a lot of when you go and look at dance rock stuff or even rock and roll stuff, you see a lot of 10-inch records. So I said, let's put this new version of Carol Williams, Can't Get Away, let's put it on a 10-inch. Why? One, the novelty of the size of the record would be something that these DJs all over the country would cherish and show off in the booth. They have a 10-inch record. Everybody's got 12-inch records. Where are you getting these 10-inch records from? and even though the issue of quality, audio quality on a 10-inch, 12-inch is a little bit better quality than 10-inch. It's not much, but I thought that the novelty of the 10-inch will create an impact, an immediate impact, if the record was good, to these DJs across the country. So we released it on 10-inch. We didn't make it commercially available, not available in the stores, only for the DJs, further enhancing their connection to treat this record like a piece of gold. It was unique, not available in the stores. And pressed about 4,000 of them, send them out to the pools all over the country. And what happened was, while Carol Williams and Can't Get Away was dying out, sales-wise, radio-wise, chart-wise, beginning to go down on the dance charts a little bit, the record started getting played in the clubs. What happened was the DJs were playing the original 12-inch version and mixing it with the new 10-inch version, back and forth, creating their own new version in the clubs, enhancing the play of the clubs, bringing it back up on the charts a little bit, creating some more sales, keeping the radio element there on the original 3-minute version of the vocal version, and sales picked up, and we revived the song that way. That was my idea, and it kind of revived the song for a while.
Was Carlos De Jesus at that time the program director at KTU?
Yes.
Did you go to him with the record? And do you remember bringing it to him?
You know, Carlos De Jesus, keep in mind, Lenny, that we had promotion people working. We had Heidi Spiegel working with us. She was very connected with the radio people. And you know, her boyfriend, I believe her boyfriend or her husband, Heidi, please forgive me, was working at BLS at the time. And, you know, she had an in with some of the people, especially with Carlos at KTU. So, you know, I'm pretty sure that Carlos got the record pretty quickly as soon as we got it. But again, the 10-inch was not something that was played on the radio, only in the clubs, because it was a dub version. You know, you couldn't play the dub on the radio, not on mainstream radio, maybe on private shows. Yeah.
Let me ask you this other part. In we're talking about 1980, 81. The dub thing was something so fresh. There was hardly nothing like that before. I mean, maybe you had Time Warp by Eddie Grant, the instrumental of that. I think that was being rocked. And there was maybe one or two other things, but there was not a lot of stuff around yet. I remember Francois was doing something as well. There was only a few pieces that was making their way. So something must have sparked you, you know, as I always call it, a synergistic moment. You know, the pot's twirling and you're around it. You're in it at that time.
Sure.
Deep in it.
Yeah. Well, you know, when you think about the logic, the evolution of dance music, a lot of the DJs, a lot of clubs were branching out. And, you know, when you think about it, you had instrumental versions of a lot of these records. and the vocal version on the other side, and then a short radio version, 3 minutes. Well, the instrumental was a big part of the club vibration. With an instrumental, you can extend the vocal and instrumental and play both and go back and forth and have fun with it. With that concept, the instrumental became very popular in the clubs. And when you go from having a lot of instrumental music being played in the clubs, what's the next level? What can we make? What can the clubs do that would be a little bit more exciting than an instrumental? Well, a dub version. Dub version, it became the next level of club excitement, echoing the vocals, echoing the drums, and a lot of that, a lot of the reggae movement, Island Records was very popular, even though they could not get a lot of their records played in the States because of the political nature of reggae, but the dub concept, I'm pretty sure, originated from a lot of the reggae, because the reggae records had a lot of that dub vibration on the B sides, and little by little, experimenting, the club movement got into dubs. And today you have, today you look at these records, you have so many mixes of a record that, after a while you get dumbfounded on why do you have 7 or 8 different mixes of a record, today. It's just...
Well, there's a reason, there's a method to that madness in the 90s that started to show that there was different types of dance genres that they wanted to, like what you were doing back then, push the record further. Like, for example, a Whitney Houston track, they would do a record mix for Junior Vasquez. They do one more for Frankie Knuckles, one more underground dub for this crowd. So, like you said, it's always about the business of the music more than the artistic part of it.
Absolutely. Record companies, are looking for answers. They're looking for a way to generate sales. Unfortunately today, there's just so many record companies coming out with music, and so many artists that are out there that to have a real hit record, it's a rough sea to navigate. But everyone's invited into the pool to give it a shot. And this is the business today. And again, like I mentioned earlier at the start of the interview, Lenny, there's a need to get back to basics today. There's a need to get back to, the artist, the song, a little bit more of that. We need a little bit more of that. And you're listening to radio today, and a lot of the stuff that's on the radio today, is still, even though it's not exactly what it was back in the 70s, there is song structure. The music business, the pulse of the, a lot of, see, the issue, Lenny, for many is that a hot club record does not mean that you have a hit record. Okay. You could have a record being pounded in all these clubs. There's a song that Danny Krivit played at a party last year. I was there at the rooftop in Manhattan, and he played a song by Inaya Day. Feeling, I think is the name of the song. Great club record. I mean, she's singing, I'm feeling. I'm feeling something about the way I'm feeling, and that message vibrates on the floor, and people are feeling the lyrics and feeling the pulse of the dance. I'm feeling something. Great connection on the dance floor. However, the record itself is not a big radio record. It's a great club record. And there's these misconceptions on what a real good record is. And not to take away from Anaya Day, she's got a great vocal. I love her to death. She's a friend of mine. But again, when you listen to the mix on the record, the piano is low. There's not enough melody, but the attack, the spiritual attack of I'm feeling, something about the way I'm feeling, communicating a message to the dance floor that is right on time for the house market. I love it, but I know for a fact that if I'm sitting behind a record company, I got to put a little bit more melody into this record to give it more of that radio feel. And these are things within the business that quietly go on, as we listen to records and play them and download and buy them.
And you know what? Again, here's another really sad part to this business. Take away all the great things that you said, and now this is where it gets really shit. They look at the algorithm of the record, a graph of how the record's performing on social media is how a lot of record labels, and I'm talking the three, four majors, will grab a record on. All that what you said, the spiritual part, the making of the record, the message has now just went into the trash because of an algorithm that says it's not performing as well as a Drake record, for example, because of, and meanwhile, he could probably do the same thing with the music, exactly, but because Drake has that audience, or Kanye West, the records can fly up with streams. It's sad. It's really sad.
And it's very true. Sometimes you have an artist come in, and because that artist has a huge following, someone like Bucci in South Africa, connected to Black Coffee, you put her records, because of her name, carry a little bit more weight, and you get a little bit more longevity with these records because of the name, even though someone else can sing the same exact record and not create the power of sales, download, and club play because it's more of an unknown artist. And not to take away from the fact that an unknown artist doesn't have a chance in this business. That's not true. There's a lot of things that have to work. But if you're running a record company and you want to decide to put artist A, and you have the power to put a name artist on this record, you're going to go with that name because this is business. You want more leverage in a sea of of music that's out there, and it's a global situation now. Back in the 60s was one, and 70s was one thing with disco. Now, when music comes out, it's a global arena. Okay, you're trying to get records charted and sold all over the place, and it creates that much more competition, to get these records happening.
Can you give us a backstory to the Pazé record? You did that 4-track album, a small EP, I guess, or however you want to.
Christine Wilshire, and I hope, she's doing well right now. I know that she's going through her health challenges.
She wrote she's fighting to get back to her life.
So I hope so. She's a sweetheart. She always was and always will be. I didn't have a lot to do with that record, except that, I was asked whether I liked it or not. I thought it was a good record, so we released it. But I didn't have a lot to do with studio work on that record, promotion. It was not something that I was personally involved with, except, and again, there were a lot of records that I did not have a lot of studio work on. We've had Tony Paris, Automan, the Larry Levan's record that we picked up, and I had very little studio work with that. There were records that we did that we picked up, and we had a consensus. Do you like the record, Ray? Yeah, I like it. I think it's got a market. It's got a big disco market, and that was part of the consensus. And we picked up the records and put them out. There were many records like that at Vanguard. And at the same time, there were many records that I was involved with the signing, and at the same time collaborated on the studio work to enhance the records. There were many records like that. There were, Junior Byron, Dance to the Music. We licensed that from Canada. At that time, Eddie Grant's Electric Avenue was big pop record on radio, and the beginning of that record has like some motorcycle sounds, electric, So we used some of those sounds on in the studio on Junior Byron's Dance to the Music. Now, keep in mind, Junior Byron, he's Jamaican like Eddie Grant. So I saw a connection of doing something like that, even though Dance to the Music is a total different record. It's a club record. It's a fun record. It's not the pop record that Eddie Grant's Electric Avenue was. But I got some ideas from Eddie Grant's Electric Avenue and put that on Junior Byron's Dance to the Music in the Vanguard studio. And I did the new mix of the record. We released it. We did very well on the dance charts and sales. That was another record. So there were many records. I mean, keep in mind, as another issue, Public Enemy. I mean, you mentioned Public Enemy in your advertisement for this show. Let me give you a little insight.
Yeah, tell us about that. Your life with them and the whole thing. What happened?
And not only that, we had Twilight 22 after that, which was, an offshoot of Africa Bombada and Planet Rock. Getting back to Spectrum City, which later became Public Enemy. I knew a gentleman by the name of Timothy Olfey. This is his picture. Tim Olfey.
Got it. Okay.
He's the president of Vibe Records. Tim and I go back years as friends. I used to go to Tim Olfey's house on 85 Summit Street in Oyster Bay. Good man. Had a lot of fine memories with him. Well, and I was part of his company, Doc Productions. We had worked together, collaborating and doing remixes on songs and forwarding these songs to record companies and these artists and getting record deals. The owner of Doc Productions, Doc Applebay, who was an actual doctor, chiropractor, and he actually owned BT Express and sold BT Express to Columbia Records for $1 million. This was all while Tim Olfey, TK, Tim Olfey, and I started, worked together under Doc Productions, trying to get record deals. Well, Tim brings me a demo. No, not a demo. This was a finished product on Spectrum City. Lies was the name of the song. Back with Check Out the Radio. Okay, now this is strictly hip hop, rap type of music. And again, When you're sitting at a record company, you have to realize that there's a world of music out there, and can you sell records with what you're doing? And I had to have an open mind to say, you know, is this a viable product for the label? There was a lot of resistance with me trying to bring a rap group to a classical jazz label at that time, okay? Not to mention that rap and hip hop was not getting too much radio play because at that time, you know, it was not considered quote unquote good music. So you had all these issues to deal with. Anyway, we signed Spectrum City. Tim Olfey brought the group to me, and I told him, we have to redo this. We have to redo the song. We have to redo Check Out the Radio. I mean, Lies, and Check Out the Radio. There's too much music, too much jazzy stuff going on. And I think we have to strip the song down to the bare elements of drums and rap, and then work on other musical things to fill in the spots. For example, adding a little James Brown piano in the middle of the record, you know, enhancing the track that way, musically. So I told him, if we can do that, because I don't want to distort your production. You produced, Tim had produced the record for Spectrum City, trying to get the deal at Vanguard, but I was not happy the way it was. I said, if we're going to pick up this record, we have to reproduce it. Go back into the studio and play with it. Take out the bass line that was too busy. Take out the Rhodes element that was too busy, and strip the record down, make it a little bit more likable for the streets. So we agreed to do the deal. And I went into the studio, redid it, Lies, and we put Check Out the Radio on the backside and redid that and released the record. We got some sales from the record. We didn't get the sales that we were hoping for. And we, you know, airplay was just very difficult with rap at that time, okay? So the only avenue was sales and club play from the hip hop clubs, not the disco clubs. They were not going to play that, and I knew that. So the record did not do as well as we planned. Everybody kind of at Vanguard wondered why I picked up this record. And to me, I thought that the vocal qualities of the group, there was something there that spoke stardom to me somehow. The way they rapped, the diction was clear. Anyway, the record didn't do well. Then I met Stevie Gordon Bahari. He sent me a couple of demos. I'm going to get back to Spectrum City and Public Enemy in a second, but I'm going to make a point with Twilight 22 and get back to the other one. Gordon Bahari was a protege, a good friend, a student of Stevie Wonder. He sends me a few demos, and one of his letters with the demo says, you know, I work with Stevie. So I was a little curious. Guy worked with Stevie Wonder. Maybe there's something here. I listened to the music. I didn't like any of it. I just didn't feel it. So, but I noticed one thing that Gordon had in his demos, and that was a feel for melody, a good feel for melody. So I call him one afternoon at Vanguard. Gordon, I got an idea. I like some of your melodies. And you incorporate some of this Middle Eastern melodies that are a little bit obscure, a little bit mysterious. I like that. Why don't we do something a little street where you could incorporate those mysterious melodies into the record and find a group of guys, do a rap on this thing, and let's see where we are. So I shipped him a copy of Planet Rock. I shipped him Pac Jam by the Johnson Crew, which Jelly Bean mixed. And I told Gordon, when you receive these two records, I want you to do one thing. Combine the rhythm tracks. That's it. Create a new bass line, combine the rhythm tracks, and call me back on the phone once you have that down. Okay? I made it simple. Combine these two street beats. Boom, 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 boom. Okay? Combine, let me hear, and put some percussion, but let me feel that on the phone. When he called me back a week later on the phone, I said, this sounds great. You know, I love the bass line. Do-do, 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 do, do-do, 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 do. I like that. But the melody on the bass line was too melodic. So I told him, make the bass line atonal. In other words, when you hear the bass line, it's not telling you what kind of song it is. It's not pretty. It sounds like a murky, deep down, negative bass line with no music on it. I told him, make it atonal. When you do the music, when you start adding those melody lines that I like that you've showed me on your demos, Middle Eastern, now we'll put the music on top of that, but make the rhythm track and the bass line negative sounding, street, heavy street. Don't worry about being labeled a person that is not musical because you grew up with Stevie Wonder. Let me handle that. Just, So then he started putting these Arabian melodies on the song, on top of that. And I fell in love with it. I said, man, this sounds good. So he went and auditioned a bunch of rappers, and he would play me their vocal. I wanted to hear their vocal qualities. I just finished working with Spectrum City and got an idea of what vocal qualities are like for rappers. So I wanted to hear good vocal qualities. I want to hear the lyrics clearly. And picked up a bunch of guys, and they did a rap. And he asked me, what kind of a rap do you want to hear? I told him, talk about the everyday stuff that's going on. Have these guys write about the stuff that they're dealing with on the street, the issues, the everyday issues. Just give me a rap regarding, that kind of stuff. And they wrote Electric Kingdom. The vocal sounded good. I went into the studio and did the mix with Gordon. But basically, I was in the capacity of executive producer, kind of guiding the project, on the phone. And eventually I did the mix with Gordon. But
you were doing what we call true A&Ring, Pinky. Real A&R.
Well, yeah.
Developing it.
Yeah, Lenny, I thank you for that comment. I realized that, I'm a real person. If I don't like something, how many times as a Billboard reporter, me playing records in a club, being asked to play a record or report a record that I didn't like. I give you one example. Gloria Estefan, Conga, big, when the record first came out, because I was playing at the Ipanema, and it was a Latin record, a Latin disco record, I was one of the first DJs to get, calls on, are you playing it? Are you reporting it? I didn't like the record. I didn't like the record.
Let's reenact the phone call. It's on Mondays, they call. Okay.
Yeah,
hey, Pinky, did you get that record we mailed you? And that's about 5 copies already they sent you.
Well, more than that.
Pinky, 10 weeks later, did you get that record, Pinky? That conga record? Oh, I got that record. You got it.
It's unbelievable. The hype that goes on.
Come on, man. What's his name is playing the record too? They're always full of that shit.
Yeah. Quietly, I didn't care who's playing the record. I didn't like it.
Pinky, we're trying to make it number one. Come on, we need you to help us take it number one.
Lenny Fontana's behind the record. Let me think about it, okay? But so to speak. So I mean, this is the environment. So I had that stigma that if I'm playing for a Latin club like the Ipanema, that certain records are just going to fly on the charts when I get it, and I'm going to be reporting these records. Not true. I mean, for a lot of the DJs that are listening to this show today, they know what I'm talking about. They know for a fact that, even if a record is being liked by another audience, if you don't like that record, you're not going to play it, no matter what you're hearing. Sometimes you go, you see a record evolving that you don't like, and it was like a borderline record for you, and you pull it out, and maybe you can do something with it in the club. Maybe you want to play the instrumental, even though you hate the vocal, things of that nature, happen. This is you're getting tons of records. Not every record is going to, sometimes you're going to miss one or two and you go back and pull it out because it's happening and you play it. That's okay. I've been through that too. That's part, this is part of your career of things you deal with. It's never smooth sailing, but you have a general idea of what you want to play. If you're playing for a house audience, you're not going to play disco. Okay, there's going to be a clash there, and vice versa. If you're playing disco, and sometimes you're not going to deal with playing house. It's just unless you have an audience that's accepting both, then you can play, with the music a little bit that way, and then take it off in a direction based on the feedback. All right, so getting back to Twilight 22, we had Electric Kingdom, big hit record. Then we had to let go of Spectrum City because my boss at Vanguard says, Ray, we got Twilight 22, we got Gordon Bahari. We don't need Spectrum City. Let them go. And I told my boss, there's something there I like about the group. There's potential. Anyway, short story, because Vanguard was not a major label, smaller label, less funding. I mean, there are a lot of things I wanted to do with Vanguard. A lot of artists that I wanted to sign that we couldn't afford. I had to deal with the reality of where we were financially with these projects. So we let Spectrum City go. They went to Columbia Records with their next release, changed their name to Public Enemy, and they became megastars. Okay? But I knew that there was something there that I really liked about the group, something about their vocal qualities and their sense of being, their presence with their vocals was a little bit, commanding for me, something that I liked. But they proved that point at Columbia Records, and, it's something that it could have been Vanguard. So it is what it is. You know, it's like life.
It happens. It happens to the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's like life. You know, in life, Lenny, like what you're doing right now, you learn from your own environment. You know, you do things. Sometimes things don't work out perfectly. You go back, you correct some things that you're working on, and based on the pain of the failure, so to speak, life is pain management, right? From the pain, you adjust your sails and you go back with a game plan and move on. And it's over time from all that pain that's putting you in a direction of your destiny. That's how life works. So we lost out on Spectrum City, but we did well with Twilight 22 and we did well with other artists. So it's hit or miss, and that's the record business.
How long does your life and your tenure last at Vanguard?
Oh, I would say our last record was 1984. So I would say 5-6 years, give or take, doing records. And we started Flip Records too. Flip Records was a division of the Vanguard Records. And keep in mind, I was part of the dance music movement at Vanguard. Had nothing to do with classical or jazz or country that the label was known for. So Flip Records became another division of dance. Back in the 80s, there was this big movement with the stuff coming out of the UK, the dance rock stuff. Boy George, Simple Minds, Tears for Fears, Falco, a lot of stuff coming out of the UK, Germany. Because I'm a music person, I liked I grew up on rock and roll, like I mentioned before, soft rock. My brother was playing all this stuff when I was growing up in his bedroom, and James Taylor, the Five Stair Steps, the Stones, the Beatles, and the 80s rock and dance rock stuff intrigued me, and I was a member of Rock Pool, getting all these dance rock records. So I said, well, let's do Flip Records and see what we can do with some of this dance rock stuff. 99 Records down in Soho, 99 Record Street, 99 Records, run by Ed Bauman, who's deceased now. Let me tell you something about 99 Records and all that rock stuff that was coming out of the UK, Germany, Scotland. I mean, this guy, Ed Bauman, I have never met a person so into street rock stuff, underground, progressive stuff in my life. It was Ed Bauman that was responsible for that White Lines record that Melly Mel sings in. That rhythm track came from
Liquid Cavern, right?
Liquid Cavern, exactly. That was his record. That was part of,
when you hear that record, you think of White Lines because it's instrumental, right?
Absolutely right. The bass line is the exact bass line. So Melly Mel and his group, they did White Lines. They put lyrics on top of the track.
I'm sorry, Optimo Cavern.
Optimo. Exactly. I'm sorry. You're right about that. That was on the other song was part of the EP. Well, this was Ed Bauman, with getting stuff. Even the street market, the R&B hip hop market was circulating around his store because he had access to a lot of this street stuff that was happening abroad. So one day I got a call from Ed Bauman. while I was at Vanguard Records. Ray, I got something for you. You know, you told me you're looking for stuff that's a little bit more song structured. I got something. Come down to the store. So I go down some afternoon, say hi to him. And he's always playing music in the store. You know, a lot of rock DJs hanging out, the DJs from the Mud Club and, you know, all these progressive DJs playing progressive music. Well, Ed calls me down and he hands me this record, says, listen to this. So he puts it on the turntable. Endgames, First, Last, for Everything. The original version from the UK on Phonogram Records. I said, wow, nice song. I like this. Melodic. So we at Vanguard communicate with Phonogram Records in the UK, and we license the record for release at Vanguard on Flip Records. When we got the permission, they sent the 2-track master from the UK. I went into the studio with Mark Berry, and we do a remix, get it released on Flip Records. I think we went to about number 31 on the dance charts with the record, Billboard dance charts. And there was a disco edit, Disco Net. Remember Disco Net? There was a Disco Net version. I forget who did the version, the edit on that created a lot of excitement those days. And that was our initial release of Endgames, First, Last, for Everything. Now, there was a little bit of a clash going on because even though we licensed this record from the UK, Endgames was packaging together a new album. We could not afford the album. They wanted a lot of money. And even though I wanted groups like Tears for Fears and Falco, we couldn't compete with the major labels with the money that these bands were asking for. So Endgames was going to release an album on MCA Records, and our Endgames release was clashing with their initial release of Endgames, and their first single on MCA was called Love Cares. And MCA Records was a little upset that we had put out First, Last, for Everything because it was interfering with their release of this new band called Endgames on their label. Okay, it was the same group, so there was a clash going on with that record. You know, this is something private that that happened, and it just was one of those things, weird things. Anyway, when I left the Ipanema, I wanted to get involved with playing more of this stuff. A little bit more Motown. I couldn't play a lot of this stuff at Ipanema, too much of a Latin audience, and I wanted to branch out and play more of the dance rock stuff, a little bit of the new wave stuff, Motown. So I went to a club called Cartoon Alley on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, West 84th Street. And it was an after-hours club. And I was able to play all this stuff, disco, funk, James Brown, Motown, new wave, and it was reggae. It was pretty cool. So, and again, it helped me kind of fine tune and maintain my ears for melody and songs doing that. Even though I loved the Ipanema dearly, I felt that I needed, because I was also involved working for Vanguard Records, I felt the need to play club music that kind of connected with my side for music in general. So I went to Cartoon Alley on the Upper West Side. Well, one of the girls that worked there as a secretary also performed at Cartoon Alley with her band. And keep in mind, Madonna used to perform at Cartoon Alley once a month. And let me tell you something about Madonna. Madonna would get on stage, and she had this cute little voice. You know, I remember her first record, Everybody, that Mark Hamons produced, good friend of mine. God bless him. You know, I got to spin at Danceteria as a guest for Mark. He asked me to spin as a guest DJ at Danceteria. Had a lot of fun with him that night. But anyway, Madonna would perform at Cartoon Alley once a month. And during her intermission, she would be very upfront, very, very clashing with her audience. You know, sometimes, you know, she was a little bit of what I would call a little bit of a bitchy person, you know, wanted things her way, you know, would talk to men, yell at men, you know, on stage. She would do that in her intermission. This was Madonna, okay? So we had a girl at Cartoon Alley that was one of the secretaries during the week handled a lot of the office work, Alexis Clark. Well, we get a record. We did a record together and put it on Flip Records as the second release, 14 Days by Lex. And the record did well on WLIR radio, progressive station, and a lot of secondary progressive stations across the country. We sold some records. Mark Berry and I did the mix on the record at Vanguard. And the record itself, 14 Days, we took that record. The concept for 14 Days was a record released in German that Ed Bauman had given me at 99 Records called 14 Tage, which translates to 14 days in English, 14 Tage in German, Taige. And the group name was, the initial group was called Fellfarben, also German. Well, the record was done in German. You know, we did a new production on it. We translated. We had somebody translate the lyrics into English. We had Lex talk the record as the artist, and we put it out, and we had a hit record with 14 Days. John Hammond, who was the radio promotion person at Flip Records, I just spoke with John the other day. We're reconnecting again on Facebook. And he remembers the record. He wishes that they would reissue the record today, 14 Days. So that was our second release. And then we had a third release. And keep in mind, the first release, Lenny, Endgames, was produced by Steve Levine. Steve Levine produced The Culture Club. Boy George, that's Steve Levine.
See, you were already on, your thumb was on it already. You were already on top of things before they were actually breaking out to become commercial status things. You were right before. So let's really say it. You were setting trends without realizing you were setting trends at the time and breaking things when nobody else saw this.
Exactly. Wow.
That.
You know, and you know where that comes from, Benny? That comes from having a tremendous open mind.
But let me be clear to everyone.
Sure.
Until you just said it, nobody understood that, Pinky. Only you and the people around you, your core, your inner sanctum at the time would have known what you were doing because you were powwowing.
That's right.
All that.
That's right.
Nobody on the outside, all we knew was we saw these records coming out. We're going, what's he doing?
You know, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. You're doing all this work. You're listening to all of these records from the pool. You're getting records in the mail. You're getting extra copies. You're talking to DJs. You're going to these DJ clubs, meeting DJs, getting a feel for how they communicate with their audience musically. And you're taking all of this in, but at the same time, you're saying to yourself, is this it? Is this all of it? You know, there's radio out there, there's radio DJs, there's rock clubs. Where is this perfect record? Where are these, you know? So even though you're in the middle of putting out hit records, you're still second guessing yourself, saying, am I missing something? Is there something, you know? And that comes from just, you know, being open to all types of music. You know, if you're just doing house or just doing disco, you can say, I like this disco record. I don't like this disco record. I like this disco record. I don't like this disco record. And I don't care if it's radio or not. Is it working for my club? And that may be okay for a lot of DJs. But when you're working with a record company and you're dealing with different audiences out there, radio, rock, R&B, hip hop, and understanding the pulses of all of those audiences, you become a little bit more humble. You become a little bit more quiet, and you listen more because you're dealing with more, you know, more avenues, you know. So, I mean, just like you, Lenny, you know, you're dealing with different interviews. You're dealing with backgrounds of people and where they come from, and you're putting all that together, and you're trying to connect with an audience and give them entertainment and give them education, you know. So, and it is what it is. And over time, you know, like you mentioned a couple of days ago, you know, you've got 69 shows. You know, this one is probably 70. You know, in a year, how many more you're going to have, and where, and the most important facet, the value of what you're doing. Is it good enough for a bigger stage to take this and do something grand with it? You know, and only you, because you're the director, you're in the driver's seat, are steering this ship, but you got to be open to everything that's going on and learn. You know, so same thing.
And also have a big pair of cojones too. And not be afraid to take the chance. And that's the difference of what you were saying back then. You weren't afraid to take the risk. You were dealing with the bureaucracy of the elders, but at the same time you wanted to take that risk to make a point.
Absolutely. You know, and it becomes a very sacred place. In other words, many times you're alone. When you're doing things and you're taking chances, when things work, whoa, everybody is on your side. Everybody loves you.
What?
When they don't work,
Rayfinky, I want you. But wait.
When they don't work.
Wait, hang on. Tell everybody the dark side.
Yeah.
What happens when it didn't work?
Absolutely. Then people can say, "Oh, he doesn't know what he's doing," or "What's wrong with him?" And
they forgot about the last 2 or 3 hit records you had. That doesn't exist no more. Now you're a failure. Wait a minute. I had 3 other big hit records.
But it's
you didn't even mention. Not to mention that you worked on Fonda Ray as well. I mean,
right. Fonda was Let me tell you about Fonda Ray. Oh my God, we had fun with that record. And Fonda is just a wonderfl person. I love her to death. When we released Fonda Ray, I was working at the Ipanema. I remember coming home Saturday night from a long night, and I always had to leave the club from the back. We had a back entrance away from the front entrance where everybody at the end of the night was hanging out in front of the club, and people would hang out for another couple of hours just talking. I had to leave the back way because every time I walked out the front way, people would stop me and wouldn't let me go home. I mean, I was tired. I want to get some sleep. So I walk out the back. Well, one Saturday night, I leave the Ipanema and I go home and I turn on the radio as I'm kind of getting ready to go to bed, just kind of curious. Turn on Frankie Crocker, put the music real low, and I'm kind of getting ready, taking some vitamins, getting ready to go to bed, having a drink of water, and I hear dum 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 dum, and I run to my radio and I turn it up. Fonda Ray's playing on the radio Sunday morning about 6 a.m. And I said, holy shit, I got to let Vanguard know this thing's on the radio, WBLS. The next day I walk into Vanguard Records, Monday morning. I talk to Ray Smith and what's the other promotion guy? Tom Gray. Did you guys hear Fonda last night on the radio? No, we didn't know it was on BLS. Frankie's playing it. So they contact Frankie Crocker. It's on test rotation, Over Like a Fat Rat. And we're all excited at Vanguard Records. The record's on BLS as a test. And when, for those that don't know a little bit about radio, especially in those days, you had test rotation, light rotation, medium, power rotation. Power rotation means the record's getting played 3 or 4 times within every 2 hours, So we were on test. And within a week, we go from test to medium rotation, and we're selling records. And here we are, Over Like a Fat Rat. Eventually, the record did well. We sold a ton of records at Vanguard. I remember Fonda performing at the garage, Over Like a Fat Rat. They loved the track there, so that was another one of my records. Completely forgot about that.
Do you know one of the most amazing things about that whole era? Right around 1980, okay, the BPMs came way down.
Yes, sir.
R&B dance record. That's right. I mean, it was just like it just went from 125 to 133 down to 114, 16. It's like,
yeah, absolutely. When you think about the hip hop market, it's less than that.
Well, we're talking about dance music. We're just talking about dance records. They just came way down in BPM.
And you make a very good point, Lenny. You know what's magical about all that? If you really study, this and the BPMs, when you have a record that is down tempo, you have the basis for the R&B market. Rock records today are down tempo too, a lot of them, because they have the fundamental, the chemistry of hitting their market, the rock and roll, and possibly the R&B market as well, with the rhythm tracks. So you get more attention when the record has a tempo that hits these, extra markets. So you try to produce records with that in mind, and you have a better chance of hitting these markets. So it's an incredible business when you understand, the target audience and how to come up with a formula. If I'm producing a record, I want to come up with a rhythm track that hits white and black. Unless the record musically, or if you have a James Brown type of a singer, then you're gonna go strictly R&B. But for the most part, you come up with a rhythm track that's down tempo, because radio, when you listen to records on the radio, you can hear the lyrics and hear the song a lot better if it's slower. When it's faster, it's hard to dissect what the singer is singing. So, if that's true, produce most of your records at a lower tempo, which features the artist more. You can hear the lyrics better when the records are slower. And R&B records, they like their records down-tempo. Hip-hop, down-tempo. Disco records are always up-tempo, but the records that make a bigger impact disco have a little bit of a downer tempo connecting with the other. That's the magic of the business.
And I know I'm going to give the magic to you and say, I want to thank you for all the education and theories and the knowledge of all those ingredients that made you the DJ that you are, the A&R man that you had become and then actually became legendary at, and also remixer, and the phenomenal work that you left all of us, always. I mean, the work speaks for itself. You don't have to do anything today. That work still holds canter in today's game. The records are beautiful. You still have that same attitude, never changed. It's the same beautiful, meaning, what I mean by that is, everyone, he's one of the guys that would sit down and explain it to you. He wouldn't throw you out of his office. He explained why he didn't like it. He'd give you some time. The other ones were not so nice, but he happens to be a sweetheart, and he would explain why your demo won't work for Vanguard or for what he's doing.
You know how many artists, Lenny, and thank you for that. Thank you so much, Lenny. You know how many artists that worked on television would send me their demo, and because they were on TV, they would try to get a record deal based on that premise alone, that they were on television and they were a star, and here's their new song. You know, you should pick it up before someone else picks it up. It doesn't work that way.
Yo, Bo Derek's got a new tune. He's on 10. And you Bo Derek, yeah. Oh, no, I can't put this out.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a lot of that.
And Phil Merman is a great singer, but that was another big disaster. Putting Sinatra with disco and Ethel Merman, Johnny Mathis. I always laugh about Steve Thompson mixing Begin to Begin.
And this was the business. I remember Santana did an interesting song, was up tempo. Jelly Bean did the mix on that record. Say It Again, okay? So there were some interesting things out there, but a lot of these television stars, they were jumping the bandwagon to do stuff, and a lot of it was just not even in the ballpark, unfortunately. So, but this was the business. The 70s brought everyone to the table to do records. There was a big excitement with disco, and I don't know, Lenny, if we can ever have that again. I don't know if we can ever get back, to that era. There was so much excitement. What was big about that era? Not only was there so much incredible music, Casablanca and TK Records led the frontier with a lot of this stuff, and there was a lot of indie labels that came in. But the fact that there were clubs, there were record promotion people circulating the clubs, there was radio people, the radio stations, the record pools. There was an extra lifeline tied in to the club market. Today, what do you have at these clubs? What's the connection? with the clubs and the bigger picture of radio sales. You know, you don't have promotion people. You have none of that. You know, it's all gone. So I don't know if we could ever get that back. You know, it's a great thing to be part of that era and take that wisdom with you and help others. You know, help others find a way that may not understand the path to having a record become a success.
It saddens me.
Yeah.
It saddens me because I was part of that business, like of the vinyl analog business. I remember it as great. It was a great business.
Oh, it's fantastic. You know, there was a
ugly too. Let's not lie. There's a lot of underhanded stuff going on, but
well,
you had the arenas to play as you were making the tracks, you can go get them tested out and see the reactions right away. That's the difference than now.
Right. You had test pressings circulating all over the place.
The difference is, Pinky, is that the music is not the number one driving factor. The DJ artist is the driving factor. The music is second, third, fourth level on the pecking order.
Exactly.
That's the problem. And that's where you don't, it's a big money making machine now with the artist more than the music.
But like I mentioned before, there's a need, and I understand. You know, it's like sports. You watch football, you watch baseball, you watch, you know, it's a business and it's evolved to the point that the salaries are through the roof and the actual ball game has changed because of all of these entities, you know, governing the game to the point that it's more important the business aspect than the game, but the fans are there for the game. So same thing with the music business. It's all of these entities are governing the music, but without the music, there is no business. So there's a need to get back to the roots of what this business is really all about, which is the artist, the song, the little things that are really the big things in this business, and get back to that and still continue the business. It's difficult to get back to roots with a lot of this stuff, but I think there's an intent to find an answer, a medium that's going to work. And one of the things that can help is, you know, a lot of these producers are young. They don't have the knowledge that you and I have, Lenny, about this business going back in time. They don't have that rich history as a part of the detail on how to produce records, you know. So they're producing records based on what they hear on the radio or on the downloads or on Track Source. And
don't forget, Pinky, Google now owns Spotify.
Right.
So you have, again, all about the algorithms of how you place. So that means if you went like this, and that could be number one. And it's not. And you would say, if someone brought that to you, you put your head in your hands and go, "This is garbage." But it's just technology has changed the game.
Absolutely.
And the other part is you don't have the camaraderie that you had back then. The excitement of something so fresh and new that was being discovered. You guys were building as you were going. You know, it's too monopolized. It's too corporate. It's just Live Nation's involved. This is involved. So we have to accept the changes.
Yeah.
And like you said, we all either stay in it and work around, do the workaround to bring some of the old classic stuff to where it makes sense for today, or hang your hat up and say, I can't do it no more.
And a lot of the old timers have done just that. They just can't, the integrity they have of creating music with real musicians and, the whole thing of analog recordings. I mean, it's changed so much. And keep in mind, as you get older, your body's breaking down, and you say to yourself, well, do I really want to reinvent myself in this market and study all the new stuff that's going on, the technology that's a driving force and going at warp speed at my age? Do I want to get involved and reinvent? That's the question. So for many, they leave and, they're happy to have done what they've done in the past, but quietly, it's a new business. It's a changing business. And something, it's always going to be a changing business. And with technology moving at warp speed, it's going to change faster. And if you're not that person that's willing to reinvent yourself, I think the message is hang it up, enjoy what you've built, and let the new people hang in there. Now, there are, for example, you have Lady Gaga and Tony Bennett, okay? I mean, doing stuff. There's going to be that test. There's going to be that test.
What do you call that? The litmus test. Yeah, there's always one or two that pop through the
right. There's always going to be that experiment. This is the music business. It's creativity. It's, if something works, good. If it doesn't work,
down to it is, does it make money? And that's where I leave it.
That's it.
Because all the executives I worked with and all the labels I worked with, they can love you to death, but they always look at how much money they're making with you. That's it. If
you're not doing that, what are you doing in this business? You're out. You're out. Yeah.
Thank you, Pinky. Thank you so much. You are a true legend of the game, brother.
Thank you so much, Lenny. I love you guys so much. I love what you do. Much success to what you're doing. I hope that 2022 is nothing more than a great platform for Lenny Fontana and True Stories. And let
me show some of your pictures too. Let me show some of the pictures. Look at Tony Smith. We just lost him recently with Danny Krivit.
Very sad.
Pinky.
Yes.
Bacho. Look at Bacho and you. Unbelievable.
Bacho. Boy, do I remember Bacho at Plato's Retreat.
Yes, a lot of people remember Bacho at Plato's Retreat. Pinky in his time with wearing his Izod shirts back in the day. Pinky behind the 1100 turntables.
Yes, sir.
Wow, you got some great. I wanted to show some of these photos. This is Pinky at his prime.
At the Ipanema, right there.
At the Ipanema, look at him.
Yeah.
Wow. And of course, with John Luongo and John Morales together.
Yes, good buddies of mine. Very nice, Lenny. Very nice memories there. Thank you so much. It's great. It's great to be here because you drift back into the past and you bring back all those memories, and all of those memories give you life. They keep you alive. Like I mentioned before at the start of the broadcast, music is the fountain of youth. Let me tell you something. All you have to do is think of a song that you love, that you like, and you're right back there at that time, bringing back those memories, those feelings of joy and happiness. And music does that. And it's, to me, music should be part of every curriculum in school. It should be mandatory to get good, to get grades and be able to get a degree in school based on your connection with music. Because I think there's the expression of freedom, the free expression to express yourself musically is liberating for everyone. Doesn't matter if you're young or old. Music does that. It liberates the spirit. So that this is something that should be part of every school curriculum. What type of music doesn't matter. You experiment with different types of music, including the dance stuff in school, but it should be part where you're being, graded and helps your career, in many ways.
Pinky, thanks, bro. 1 second. Let me just make next week's announcement, and then we're going to say goodbye to you. Hold on. We got Johnny D next week from Henry Street. We go from the 80s now into the 90s. Johnny D, another big A&R executive, sort of like Pinky, worked at Atlantic, signed amazing house records on Henry Street Records. Those remember the Bucketheads, The Bomb, and all the big hits that Johnny D was involved with. Tori Amos, Armand Van Helden. He A&R'd and helped get those remix projects become massive hits. He will be here next week for a special Thanksgiving Eve on True House Stories. So tune in. And of course, Pinky, we're going to leave you here because we're going to need to talk to you more. We could spend all night talking to you. You're an educator. You need to run for public office before you... Because I always tell everybody one thing about Pinky. Pinky is loved by everybody. He hurts no one. He has no ill will in his body.
And you know something, Lenny? Music does that. Music opens up the doors of love. You listen to a record and there's parts of the record that just touch the inner soul. You listen to all that Motown stuff back in the 60s, Diana Ross, Love Child, The Temptations. There's something about the melody and the music that just hits home, and it's beyond words. And music will always be that avenue of expression. And it's very liberating when you're dealing with stress, when you're dealing with complications in life. Music will take a moment and soothe you, and there's nothing wrong with that. That extends life. So I'm gonna be a music person to the day I die. What do you think, Lenny?
You ain't dying, Poppy. You're gonna be here to forever and ever. You'll be past all of us, trust me.
Thanks a lot, Lenny. I love you so much. Thank you so much.
When I make the movie about Pinky, you'll all tune in. You're gonna know Pinky right there, but he said it better. No one could say it as well as he has. Bring it to the schools. Pinky, the only reason why I mute you because we're getting feedback. But his words echo what I've always say. Study your instruments, know your music. You got to go in the studio, understand what you're doing, know music, fundamentals of music and stuff that will help make records, because you just don't want to be logged into just a computer and become part where you're just dragging and dropping sounds. You should really know the architecture, and this could help you change the game.
If a lot of these producers, Lenny, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if a lot of these producers knew that they are in a global competition with what they're doing, and that what they are really doing of just copying stuff and sampling stuff and just laying down basic rhythm tracks is a dime a dozen. It's all over the place. That there's got to be a little bit more meat to the production. Then I think, you would have, a lot of these producers do more homework before they go into the studio. That's the key. You're producing something, your signature's on it. Why make it sound like this other record that's not, that's not really happening on a major level? There's a lot of competition. Today more so. Again, with all of the technology, things are moving very quickly, and there's a psychological effect on these producers telling them, hurry up and get the record done. Hurry up and get the record done, because there's a lot of records coming out and you're competing with that. But that doesn't mean that when you release your record, it's going to be accepted by the masses, because the production is not polished because of the rush, because you're trying to meet with the demands of fast-moving technology. Take your time, do it right, and once you release it, let the technology speak at that point. But don't try to do it because of the technology affecting your production. In other words, you want to quickly do the record as compared to doing the record correctly. So, and it is what it is. It is today what it is. You can't, if this is the environment, a smart producer takes all of this in, does the homework, and tries to find a solution, which may take trial and error. But over time, you're moving in a direction to capture your part of what you're doing out there.
Words from the wise. Words from the wise. Pinky, thank you so much. We went way over time, but we were so happy to have you talk as long as we could, because we had to get every morsel we could out of you. God bless.
So I thought we were doing a nine-hour interview. Lenny, I'm waiting here for 9 hours. My clock says we have another 4 hours, 5 hours left.
Yes, we do. We'll bring you back for sure, Pinky. But the people were so happy, and this will be everywhere. Again, everyone, we want to sign off around the world. Thank you again. Pinky, don't leave us yet. Thank you again for tuning in. See you all next week right here. Same bat time, same bat channel.